Hello, everyone. It's Dan here from Fireside Strategic. We believe that there's a new way to lead and grow businesses that combines razor sharp strategy and down to earth warmth and kindness. We call it human centric business growth. In the Fireside Chat interview series, we interview CEOs and business owners who share this philosophy. Our goal is to uncover insights that can help other leaders grow their companies and to do it with humor, curiosity, and chutzpah. Today, we're chatting with Shawn Johal, founder of Elevation Leaders. Shawn, so good to see you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. So, we'd love to learn just the basics about you and Elevation Leaders to get us started.
Absolutely, yeah. So maybe I'll give you a bit of background on myself. I'm an entrepreneur. I had the opportunity to start an LED lighting business, so kind of a very unique market. That was in 2009. We were actually coming from a very bad family bankruptcy. My family and father-in-law had an opportunity to really build this lighting business with my brother-in-law and my mother-in-law. They built a very interesting public company up to about 50 million right before the recession hit. And then there was a tough company purchase, the economy downturn, and within 1 year, the whole business kind of came crashing to a halt. Very difficult time for the family, but my brother-in-law and I had a chance to buy back three of our key divisions and start fresh. So we started that company called Dals Lighting. And that company is going strong. It continues to go strong today. About 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to start a new business called Elevation Leaders, which is all about strategic planning and helping businesses that are between 5 and 100 million approximately scale profitably.
What did you learn from your lighting days that is so helpful and powerful now?
Well, the fact that we came from a bankruptcy completely rewired our brains, right? Instead of having a mentality about growth, we had a mentality about survival and profitability. So everything that we did was about bottom line. We didn't care as much about revenue. Revenue really became vanity for us. Cash is really where it was, profit is sanity and cash is king, as they say. So we cared a lot about the structure, the foundational health of the business and building that the right way to make sure that we would never go through that tough time again, because it was really rough.
Oh, I love that. And I'm sorry that you went through that. But on the other hand, there were so many lessons learned, right? And it's amazing how our journeys seem to be so set up for us to go through some of these challenging times. And it struck me when looking at some of your materials that meditation and mindfulness and not just helping leaders grow their companies, but helping them grow as humans is a big part of what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. What I've realized is that, happiness and success go hand in hand. I see so many people chasing success. And when I ask them about, well, are you happy doing this? They always give me the same answers. They say, no, well, I'll be happy when I sell my business, when I bring in that new team member, when we land that new client. And I always explain to them, I say, that's going to come and go, and it's not going to change anything with your level of happiness. You may get a nice little short release of dopamine or, whatever chemical is going to be released at that point, but you will not have lasting happiness throughout the journey. So when we go into businesses, we bring a very holistic approach saying, okay, yes, we want to fix your business, help you grow it, help you scale profitably. However, we are going to integrate meditation, mindfulness. It's a very strange way for people to see it. Honestly, that a lot of times people see this and they think, what do you mean? And then at a break in our meetings, I'll say, okay, everyone, let's put our stuff away. We're going to do, a mindfulness or a meditation exercise right in the middle of a strategic planning session. It gets people really uncomfortable, but then they start seeing the benefits.
It's funny, through years of teaching at McGill, teaching at the law school, I would take students outside for a little meditation. And some of the looks I would get from passersby were like, is this a law school class? What are you doing? I think increasingly, so right there with you, I love that you incorporate it into strategic planning and the benefits are being increasingly demonstrated to the mainstream, right? The creativity benefits, the relaxation benefits. But to me, one of the really interesting points you bring up is you help leaders transition from this space of the vanity stuff, the dopamine hits, to longer term, let's do it right. Let's build a really solid foundation. Meditation and mindfulness are really interesting bridges from one mindset to the other.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the big thing I also see happening all the time is this stress reduction, right? They're so stressed. And I'm always thinking, how will you get to that next level of success if you're that stressed out? So you're going at a million miles per hour. And again, this mentality that one day you'll just sell your business and you'll be happy, which a lot of times doesn't happen. People feel like
Yes.
they lost a part of their soul. That's my mentor taught me. He says, you got to be careful because you think you want to sell your business and then you sell it and now you have nothing
Yes.
left and you're back to, missing it. But along the way is, okay, how are we going to reduce stress? And the fun thing about the scaling up methodology, which we teach, is that there is a tremendous amount of the methodology, which is all about removing a lot of pressure from the shoulders of CEOs and from the VPs and directors in businesses.
Really curious in general. I mean, I love the messaging myself. I'm really curious in general what percentage of leaders that you're speaking with tend to really be open to not just a focus on scaling, but also open to the messaging around happiness and changing their lives. Like how much take up is there with that message?
The percentage changes along the way. So there's a percentage when we start, and I would say to you that percentage at the beginning when I start explaining a lot of these things are probably closer to about 25%. Openness, where they're really all about the scaling up thing, and you're going to do some of this other stuff, great, whatever. I'm not too worried about it. And then usually that'll go up to about 85 to 90% once we start integrating it. And I give you an example, Dan. We go into a meeting. Everybody's stressed out. We have these really tough, deep conversations. We go into, some strategy. Then I send people on break. Now they're getting onto their cell phones. They're getting onto their emails. They're getting themselves stressed out again, right? Because it's an offsite, but now they're getting themselves back into their day-to-day. How is it possible for a coach like myself to let them come back into the room? Their brains are now jumbled with all the strategic stuff we did earlier, and now all this new operational fires that they have to put out. And I'm expecting them to have, this incredible amount of focus and jump back in. It's impossible. So that's why I do some very specific things to say, listen, we need to gain back your focus. And so I think they can use those tools after in everything that they do, including for them, where I teach a lot of them how to transition between their personal life and their professional life and vice versa. So when you end, let's say you end your day of work, what are you doing to transition now to be with your family, to be with your loved ones, to be with your kids? A lot of people don't make that transition, and they bring all the baggage from their stressful day with them. And now they're not a good father, good mother, a good sister, brother, whatever it is. So, it all has to come together. One is not separate from the other. We call it an integrated approach, right?
Love it. And I think you're bang on, particularly in this pandemic moment where the boundaries between work and the rest of life are the illusionary boundaries. They're disappearing in so many ways. And so let's go there. Like, how can our audience of business owners, CEOs, leaders, how can they make that transition more smoothly?
There's some very simple tricks. So, you can look at it as kind of, there's some big elements, but I like to talk about some of the small tools that people can use right away. So the first thing to do is to understand what you're going to do to make the transition. Literally, when you're at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, what are you going to do at that point when you're going into your more personal life? One thing that I teach people is to do a 32-second meditation. Just takes 32 seconds. There's a myth out there that people got to spend 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, minutes, hours in a cave somewhere in the mountains. You don't need to do all of that. It's scientifically proven that in 32 seconds, you can reduce blood pressure and reduce stress and make the transition happen. So you just think about this, Dan. It's you take 4 breaths in, you hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and you hold for 4 seconds. And you do that twice. So if you're a mathematician, 16 seconds twice is 32 seconds. You're good to go. Do that simply when you end your workday before you go into your personal life, and use that as your transition to happen from one to the other. It's a tiny little trick, but since CEOs and high-level strategic partners have been doing it, they've been noticing the difference that they're able to kind of shut down what they're doing from a day-to-day basis.
I love that. And what a way to make meditation accessible. What a way to make a healthier life accessible to very busy people who pride themselves on how busy they are, right? Now there's no excuse anymore. Here's something that, like, are you really not gonna, do you really not have 32 seconds? Everyone claims they don't have 5 minutes when they do, but now no one can claim they don't have 32 seconds.
You always have 32 seconds, Another trick that I absolutely love that I use for myself quite a bit is what we call the brain release. Okay, so what you do is you end your day, and you still have things happening, right? You haven't answered all your emails. You haven't done all your to-dos. Typically, most people don't just finish their days with a sense of complete satisfaction and that I have nothing to do tomorrow. They're
Right.
already thinking, right? We're not in the present moment. That's another huge issue. As human beings, we spend most of our time in the future, in the past. So now you're in the future. You're thinking, what do I have to do tonight? What do I have to do tomorrow? Who do I have to call back? What do I have to answer? What you do is you do a brain release where you take a piece of paper or a nice little diary and you write down every single thing on your to-do list. Everything. Personal, professional, doesn't matter, family, sports, whatever you have to do. You write it all down, get it off your brain. So that's the first part, which is the brain release part. So you're going to feel like a weight is being lifted off your shoulders. And then you want to use the Covey quadrants to determine after that what's urgent versus important, what's urgent and not important that you can get rid of, what's not urgent and not important that you can delegate completely, but then try to spend time in quadrant number 2, which is important but not yet urgent. We spend most of our time as human beings in quadrant number 1, which is urgent and important. We need to be spending time in quadrant 2, which is obviously important and not urgent. So then you classify all those to-dos on your list. And hopefully you can cross a bunch out and say, why the heck am I even doing this? It's completely useless. And then you can attack the ones the following day, but you get to have more of a transition there because now you're saying, okay, I got it all on paper. I know what's going to happen. I know what I have to do. I'm not stressed out anymore.
Yeah. And it's thinking ahead to the deep truth that there is going to be a point at which no matter how mindful you are the next day, there's going to be a point at which you lose that mindfulness. There's going to be a place at which you're not present. And you want to, just like for growing your business, you want to have systems in place to mitigate the risk of you misusing your time.
Absolutely. You have to be very careful. That's all we have. As Warren Buffett often said, if you type up Warren Buffett and the word time on YouTube, you'll get his video and he explains, even for him who can have access to anything in the world, he says, I'm like every other human being. I only have a limited amount of time, so I have to be very mindful how I use that time.
Yeah. And speaking of time, I think it's a great segue to, in a way, integrating some of the 2 big areas that you work with people on, the human side and the business growth side. Do you find that prioritization is a big thing that you work with leaders on?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we spend so much time on that. The problem that businesses have and business leaders that they want to do everything, right? You just have so many ambitions, you have so many goals and priorities. And so you have this massive list of priorities and goals that you want to accomplish. But the problem is you end up doing all of them very mediocre and nothing in a great way. So my biggest challenge, to be honest with you, and spent actually all of yesterday just working with one client on this. We spent hours. It's what can you say no to? That's as important as what we say yes to. So what we'll do is that when we start building the annual and quarterly priorities, we're going to build I let them go crazy and build everything. So put everything on paper that you want to do. We put it up on the screen. No problem. Tell me all the things you want to do. And then we start categorizing them in order of importance. And then I say after we get, to the top, usually it's top 3. They'll always try to squeeze in a 4th or a 5th, but top 3, okay, this is all we're going to do. We have to say no to the rest. Then they start having a panic attack. So that's where we have to really challenge each other and say, is that really necessary? Why are we doing it? And figure out better tools and tricks to make sure that we don't get caught in that game of just doing everything very, very low quality. It's much better to focus on a few things, get those done right, and then, do the rest later.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. There's another bit of wisdom from Warren Buffett too, right? He says you should have 3 or 4 goals, write 10 down, write your top 10 down, pick 3, right? And roll with those.
Yeah, that's the only way you should be doing it, because the way I always see it happen is that we'll do number 1 incredibly well. We'll do number 2 and 3, good, not perfect, but we'll get them done. Number 4, we're going to talk a lot about it and say we're going to do it. We won't do anything. And number 5, we'll ignore it completely. So that's usually how it goes for the top 5 priorities, without fail, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And speaking of priorities, I'm curious, for elevation leaders, do you prioritize working with certain types of businesses? Like, for folks listening, is there a particular type or series of types of businesses that you prioritize working with?
So we really work with every single industry that you could imagine. It's funny, sometimes we work on our client decks and we say, okay, how are we going to explain to people who we work with? And then we look at our clients and it's like, okay, a SaaS company, telemedicine, we're working with manufacturing companies, we're working with aviation, or we just have so many different, because scaling up the methodology works with every type of business, because we're attacking, the 4 big pillars, which are people, strategy, execution, and cash. So the type of business really doesn't matter. Every business has the same foundational challenges and opportunities. So it allows us to go in there and implement. Of course, we'll adapt ourselves to the clients depending on where they are. One thing that I really despise is duplication. So, sometimes when I go into a business, let's say we say we're going to work on your core values, which is, considered by a lot of people more of the softer stuff. We think it's very foundational. But it does happen where I get into a company and the values are amazing. They've worked on them as a team. They've built them the right way. They're using them the right way. I'm not going to go in there and say, okay, you know what? Doesn't matter. Scaling up says we got to start the values. And we got to redo the values. We're going to say, okay, yes, we'll challenge them on them a little bit, but we'll move on to the next thing. But yeah, so businesses between 5 and 100 million that I don't like to say want to grow necessarily, because there's a lot of our businesses that are just caring about fixing, really getting the foundational piece into it. It is called scaling up. I like to call it profitable growth. I think, we do that in our business and we continue to do in our business. It's very tough to work with companies that are just trying to scale for the sake of scaling. It's a little bit more challenging. I do have a couple of clients like that are public companies, and that it's burn and churn and they're not really worried about profitability, and that's fine. That's their model. But most of the times we'll work with companies that are really focused on having profitable growth.
It is amazing. I love the emphasis on that. It's amazing. I know I see this in our work, how frequently you talk about the dopamine hits and the vanity metrics of revenue as opposed to what's the actual cash flow here. And it is such a different mindset, right? To be so in pursuit of that top line growth. And there's something, it's like a badge of honor in a way to say my revenue is X. And we have to be so careful of that. And I think as we become more mindful as business leaders, we should watch for those instincts we have towards vanity, because so often they feel contrary to this. What I love your focus on: think long term, build really, really solid foundations before you go crazy and boost your revenue numbers and chase your dopamine hits.
Yeah, the foundational part is so important. I'll give you the perfect example. I have different range of clients. I do have a client that's $100 million company. They make $1 million a year. And I have a client that's a $10 million company that makes $2 million a year. And of course, it's easy to look at those two and say, which one would you prefer? At the end of the day, though, when they're making the same amount, you have a $100 million company and a $10 million company, both making $1 million. The complexities, the challenges, and the stress that come with that $100 million business are literally 10 times more. And so you have to ask yourself, well, why am I trying to grow to that size if I'm just going to have all this stress and not make any money at the end of the day? So yeah, we really got to fix the foundational part, make sure that the company is profitable. And then if we want to go after growth, we'll do it the right way, but without sacrificing company culture and without sacrificing well-being.
I love that. And, I have to confess, yesterday with our company coach, I had this new sort of idea, which I think it's a pretty solid idea for increasing our profitability, but I could just see my mind in this weird place of scale. I want scale. And, I'm really honest with myself. I don't know that I do to the extent that I was thinking. And so we talk about the culture. We have to be aligned, right? Both as people working in the business and as business owners and C-suite leaders. So important for that alignment between the culture and the ultimate financial goals. They're like, you're not going to be happy if maybe you even succeed and you're unhappy. That's a bad place to be.
Yep, I totally agree with you. And that's why when we come in, we really work on the first thing is the beehive, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal for a company. And this is where entrepreneurs really struggle. I tell them, listen, we're going to build your beehive, but we're not allowed to make it a financial goal. And then they start freaking out. Oh, no, it's got to be financial. And I say, no, we're absolutely not allowed to make this a financial goal. No one cares. Like, no one cares if you want to be 50 million, 100 million, 200 million. You're the one who cares. Maybe you have a couple of, a salesperson and the finance person who care, but not the people working, not the mid-level managers, not the entry-level people. No one's going to care about the revenue number. You have to give them a different goal that's going to inspire and motivate the right behaviors. And a financial goal will never do that. And it's funny, I always meet with entrepreneurs. I don't know why this is a magic number, but I've noticed for small businesses, the magic number I hear every single day is 100 million. It's like every small business wants to get to 100 million. It's a rite of passage, as you mentioned. People think about that. But I say to them, listen, if you want that as a sub goal for yourself, amazing, that's great. I don't really care about that. Let's come up with a goal that's going to inspire the entire team to move in the right direction. And so that's a challenging exercise, but we usually find our way. So
Huh. It's so interesting that the BHAG has to be non-financial. Yeah, I could feel some resistance in my body as I heard you say that. So your view is that even businesses that on the at first glance don't feel mission oriented, there can always be a mission unearthed.
Always, always. I've never found a company that doesn't. We struggle sometimes to find the right BI, but I've never found a company that can argue with me that their goal has to be financial. We can always
Yeah.
find another way to structure it. There's so many interesting concepts and ideas out there. And the BI concept that Jim Collins came out with came from those ideas of Microsoft that said a computer in every home, or Amazon that said every book ever printed available in 60 seconds or less. Those
Yeah.
were, of course, they lead to financial success and financial well-being, but the goal
Yes.
itself is what you want to motivate people to work towards, not the financial element ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful way to think about it. And as we come towards the end of our time together, it's a perfect segue to a last question that pops up for me, which is, what is your non-financial BHAG, and what's fun for you when you're not working?
Ours is financial. No, I'm just kidding. We have our company for elevation leaders. We came up with this recently. Our BHAG as a company is to have 100 elevation leaders hubs in the top 100 entrepreneurial cities in the world. So, we know that strategic coaching, a part of it's gone hybrid with everything that happened during
Yeah.
COVID, but a lot of it's still going to be in person. Companies like to have someone come into the business, work on strategic planning directly with them for that collaboration and creativity mindset. It's very hard
Yeah.
to do it over Zoom. I am doing it over Zoom with a handful of clients, but a lot of times it is really good to be in person. So we know that strategically in the big cities, we want to have somebody there. So for us, that's a huge part of it. It's really to go out there and decide, okay, what are the big entrepreneurial cities in the world, whether it's Europe,
Yes.
whether it's South America, whether it's North America, and then have an amazing coaching partner, create our hub there, and we do it in partnership with them. So that's our BHAG.
Awesome. Super, super cool. Anything else you want to throw into the mix to tell the audience about anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't?
We could be here for hours. We have limited time, so I would just say to people out there, if you have a business and you want to look into foundational work, you want to look at the strategic planning, you feel your team's at a certain level but you want to take it to that next level, we can have a chat. It's worth talking and discussing what we can do to help them kind of take their success to the next level. It's always good to have that conversation. I love speaking with CEOs and strategic teams out there. But yeah, it's people do scaling up for a lot of different reasons. Some have hit a
Yeah.
wall. Some want to plan their growth. But I think we could all agree that every single business should have a strategic plan for the next
Yeah.
long term, 3 years, 1 year, and 90 days. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
where we help people as much as possible.
Very cool. And is there anywhere on the socials, if people want to follow you, any social media handles that they should be aware of?
Yeah, if they just go to LinkedIn, Shawn Johal, that would be the number one place. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So we can have some great chats there. And elevationleaders.com is the new website.
Fantastic. Well, Shawn, pleasure to have you. Really, really good, important work that you're doing in the world. So excited to support it, and wishing you every success under the sun.
Well, thank you, Dad, for having me. This was really great. I really appreciate it.